we're going to call the feature briefing. So I've got two short 20-minute presentations from Mukadim and Steve, who will be presenting after Mukadim, and then I'm going to have a chat with both of them in a sort of fireside mode. So get your questions lined up, and we can go a bit blue sky in this session, in this part of the day. So feel free to venture with esoteric questions and the questions that are less usual. Now, for disclosure, Mukadim and I have written a book together, and I think we're in a pipeline to write another one a bit later in the year. But Mukadim, if you could just bring your mic up, then say hello.
Yeah, you can hear me.
Perfect. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. How are things?
Excellent. Yeah, very good. Now we're running over, but don't worry about that. We can compress the closing fireside with myself, Tim, and Mark and Eric. So that's fine. Just run your 20 minutes, and like to introduce yourself and do your presentation, please.
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen first. You can see it, right? Sorry, I can't see it myself. Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. So I'm Mukadim. I'm tuning in from Australia in Melbourne. So this is early hours in the morning. So I used to work for a Australian operator called Telstra. I worked there for about 9 years, and then I probably have considered COVID-19 as an opportunity to going through a evolution or revolution, whatever you call it. So about 2 months back, I have joined an operator in the US called Dish Network. So I'm still working out of Australia because the borders are closed, there are no flights, and I'm working in the mountain time zone, which is basically midnight Australia time to 9 o'clock in the morning. So interesting times. So thanks for everyone for tuning in. So we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is edge computing and what edge computing means for content delivery and the service creation associated with that. Several speakers earlier in the day touched on edge computing, and they have talked from the perspective of streaming, they talked from the perspective of local processing. So this talk is going to be a little different, and I'm putting my operator hat on and going to touch on what edge computing means for an operator and how operator can actually enable the edge computing and do the content delivery at scale. So before we dive in, let's take a look at what's happening in the industry around us. So we are living in a time where everything is changing around us. So streaming suddenly became an essential service. And if you listen to our friend Dan Rayburn, so he quoted the other day, apparently there are about 1,200 streaming services globally. So if you consider the big ones and the small ones and the niche ones. And then as we are embracing streaming in our daily life, we are also embarking on the path to rely on new delivery mechanisms, such as 5G and edge computing. And then our consumption patterns are also changing. So if you look at the Cisco VNI report, it called out that by 2022, 82% of all of the traffic will be video. And then the mobile usage is going to skyrocket, and then per person mobile usage would be on an average 24 gigabyte by 2025. And along with that, what's happening is now we have access to high resolution screens, different type of content, and content at different resolution as well. So with all these streaming services evolution, yet customers are constrained. So customers are constrained in terms of how much money that they can spend. And studies shows that an average US household is willing to spend up to $21 per month for the streaming services that they consume. So that means that the maximum number of streaming service that you can fit into that $21 bill is only 3 streaming service. So that means any streaming service that is up and coming, or that is incumbent, or that is evolving over a period of time, it's going to actually stand out from the crowd so that they are part of the top 3 list. So what really these streaming services would have to do to stand out? So we look at it as a streaming service need to adopt a multi-pronged strategy so that they can offer the best content, they can offer the best experience, as well as they offer it in a cost-effective manner. And all of that will need to be supported by several technology enablers. So some of them are existing and some of them also are emerging. So the ultimate goal here is that how can you create a TV-like experience based on the streaming services that you have got access to. So I wanted to introduce the concept of web scale streaming. So the terminology web scale, it basically has been used extensively in the IT industry as well as by the hyperscaler cloud providers. But web scale is not necessarily a proprietary terminology that should be sitting with those two industry verticals. Rather, web scale is you are going to provide the TV live experience to tens and millions of subscribers all around the globe. And how do you do that? And to enable that web scale streaming, really there are 5 things that needs to happen. And depending on the streaming service that you have, you may actually activate one or multiple of those 5 pillars. But the ultimate web scale streaming that will get realized that when all 5 basically play together coherently in some form or shape and then enable the TV-like experience. So those 5 pillars would be edge caching. So how do you actually leverage the power of edge computing at the edge of the operator's network, as well as into customer premises or branch locations? How we can do on-the-fly transcoding based on the customer context, the device type, the network conditions, and predict even where the user's mobility would be. And based on that, we can optimize the content. Scalable backend, basically how you can do the horizontal scaling of all of the backend services as the number of subscribers for the streaming service grow exponentially. And the COVID-19 was a perfect example where people basically pour into several streaming services, and the number of signups against the streaming services has been enormous. And I've seen some stats where on an hour basis, there has been 20, 25, 30,000 subscribers signing in to a streaming service because they wanted the content to be available to them and have some sort of an entertainment when they're in a lockdown situation. So we need to have a scalable backend to serve that kind of demand. And as we do that, we need to rely on some sort of a best-in-class delivery mechanism. So be it 4G, 5G, mobile broadcast, fixed or satellite. And all of them will need to have a place, but then the on-demand utilization of the delivery will be the prime importance there. So finally, we need to have that customer obsession in our mind. So basically how we can offer a tailored experience, which is driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we can really tailor and personalize the experience for the customer. So for web scale streaming to really operate in its true form, so all these 5 components need to come together in some form or shape. But then what is underpinned in the web scale streaming performance is that how we are going to place the workload for streaming delivery and the associated applications logic, that how we can place it closer to the end users. There come edge computing. So the reason we wanted to put the streaming processing at the edge of the network and almost at a one-hop delivery to the end users, because we want to give the users the best possible viewing experience. And if you look at the study shows that by experiencing buffering and streaming delays, users have the same type of reaction as if they are watching a horror movie. And none of us who are in this media streaming business, we want to give our users that experience that they are watching a horror movie where they should be probably watching Game of Thrones or some other popular TV shows or some other movies, and they should be enjoying their time. So what edge computing does is it promises to offer that low latency, local processing, and high bandwidth delivery to the end users. So if you look back probably 15 years ago, the term edge computing started appearing from the CDN industry. And Akamai on and off use the word edge computing. Limelight has been using the word edge computing, and several other CDNs use the word edge computing. So CDNs really offered that early glimpse of what an edge computing will look like. But edge computing is beyond just the content delivery and then processing of the streams at the edge of the network. There is more to it. So there are several applications that could be fit to the edge locations, but then really where we are talking here is how we can bring both the application, the user plane, the data and processing closer to the end user so that we can give the most optimal performance in an edge native fashion. So there are several players in this edge computing ecosystem. And two of the prominent players in that edge computing ecosystem, other than the CDN, is really the hyperscaler itself and the operator. And if you look at through the orchestration control plane, and if edge is basically considered as a domain, it needs to have the inventory, certainly, and the associated service modeling, so that all the assets that are in that edge computing domain, they are being tracked, their status is maintained, and the algorithms have been developed to ensure that as you are moving the workloads, that it is actually placed at the right location. And then two other things that needs to come into play for the edge service creation and for edge computing to come to life is how the local breakout for the user control plane will happen. Like, where do your user terminate in your mobile network? So is it in the core of the packet gateway, or is it actually going to be more distributed? And finally, the edge is not going to be infinite, but there will be more edge locations compared to today's CDN POPs or today's cloud POPs. So the way edge infrastructure is built, it has to be template driven, so that almost in a cookie cutter fashion, that we can accelerate the deployment and growth of the edge infrastructure. So let's take one example that how we can actually enable streaming at the edge. So if there was a use case where there is a live streaming happening for a competitive sports, there is a sudden spike. And as soon as that spike happens, so the backend of the operator's network should be able to do the on-demand provisioning of a media streaming network slice, which is leveraging the edge capabilities. And then the user's application should be able to run the streaming on that media streaming slice so that it can sustain a premium video quality of experience. And when I'm talking about the media streaming slice here, it's not simply the slice in the RAN, the radio access network, rather it's a network slice which is dedicated for media streaming end to end, from glass to glass, from the content generation endpoint to the content consumption. Now, the early use cases for edge computing has been pretty much focusing on infrastructure offload or cost reduction or reduction of the traffic that are traversing or even performance improvement. But there are more and more monetization use cases related to edge computing are coming into play, such as video analytics at the edge or public safety or infrastructure free branch and few others. So edge computing product opportunity itself could be of multiple types. There could be some edge computing product offering that are directly sold to the customers. Some of them could be B2B type offering. Some of them also could be B2B to C type offering. Now, from this edge value chain, so this is not all or nothing in terms of the product offering. Rather, depending on the type of organization that are playing a role in the edge computing ecosystem, and depending on the type of operator and its capability, they may come up with one or multiple different types of product offering. And this is not possible on its own. So the operators really need to work in conjunction with other players in the ecosystem. So be it the hyperscaler cloud provider, or be it some other global consortium such as MobileEdgeX, Equinox, or Vapor.io, or even some of the CDN providers or other industry partners who are very good at system integration, and they can actually create this end-to-end ecosystem through the technology stitching, and also can offer the lifecycle management down the line. And depending on the type of partnership that the operators and other parties in the ecosystem will form, so it will actually enable different types of use cases. but majority of those use cases will still be driven by video and streaming and the online experience and potentially cloud gaming. To wrap up, so Webscale streaming is probably the way to go. And the only way Webscale streaming can happen is when we are leveraging the true power of edge computing. And to do that, a streaming service needs to really adopt this multi-pronged strategy. So where it's offering the optimal content, the best experience, as well as associated value proposition. And the service creation for this type of streaming service needs to adopt this edge native principle so that it can leverage the edge computing capabilities and the related orchestration for the edge service to really scale across the edge infrastructure. And finally, this immersive media experience that we want to offer at scale. And if we want to build it on the edge capabilities, it can't be done alone. So it needs to be done in partnership, and it can only happen through co-creation and collaboration. Thank you.